of that. I appreciate you greatly. It's been a lot, I know. Yeah, we recently had to add in the personal property rider, a couple of extra things like hot tub, in-ground pool had gotten missed. So we're just, they're minor revisions, nothing that if you've used the April 23rd version, no harm, no foul. You're still great, so we're just adding little things just to make it absolutely perfection. So that's all we're doing. So good morning, and welcome.
I
Glad
would
to have you all
advise
here.
everyone though, when you're gonna go and take a listing, go into MRED in broker forms or in the RSA, get the most up-to-date form. It's in your best interest to have the most up-to-date form.
Absolutely, Sandy. That is great advice. We have definitely had times where agents have turned in forms from 2018, 2019,
Yeah.
and those are definitely not the most current forms. So, and obviously those are usually addendums and things like that that are kind of oddball forms, but let's make sure to be on top of that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and we'll get started. And again, thank you all for coming today. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. This is going to be recorded as well. Let me go ahead and make sure that we are recording. Oh, I'm already recording. I thought I had paused it. So we are recording. Here we go. All right. So we are going to start with the listing agreement.
Yes.
All right. And just open this guy up. All right. Can you all see the listing agreement on your screen? And I know, Sandy, you always say make it bigger,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
There we go. All right.
Okay.
So I've had questions already. Title is held by our agents, and some of them do not understand that line. And guys, this is the title that is on the deed. This has nothing to do with title insurance. So if Mary Smith owns the house, okay, Mary Smith's name goes on line 1. And additionally, the title is held by Mary Smith at line 2. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
The address, whatever the address is, 123 Main Street, Unit 304, city maybe Barrington, Illinois, 60010, county, let's say it's in Lake County, Illinois. All right, every property that is being sold, residential or otherwise, has a permanent index number. This number is on your tax bill. You can also find it under the tax assessor's website, or you can go into Realist and pull up the address. It'll give you the permanent index number. I advise you always to get a copy of that before you list the house. All right, so that you know what the taxes are and you can record them accurately. All right. Lines 8 through 13 are pertaining to parking, common elements. So is the parking deeded? Is it assigned? Is it a limited common element? Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? If there's a space number, put in the space number. If there's a separate PIN number for the parking, you would insert it at line 10. Some of these deeded parking spaces can actually be sold separately. I had an agent recently in our office tell me that she wanted to sell for her client a parking space that was not deeded. In other words, let's say you move into an association where there are 2 parking spaces for this unit. They are not deeded, you cannot sell them. All right, the only party that could sell parking spaces that are not deeded would be the association. They would have to decide to make a decision to sell off parking spaces. All right. So that cannot be done. All right. Down at line 15, you're going to put the start date of this agreement effective. That's today's date. All right. May the 2nd, 2025. I don't care if you do this listing agreement for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Many of our agents do it for a full year. That is completely acceptable. You're going to put the expiration date, and you must have an expiration date at line 16. All right. We are the brokerage. HomeSmart Connect LLC is the brokerage. And we're being granted exclusive rights to market, promote, and sell the property through the MLS and other platforms as well. The prevailing party is entitled to attorney's fees. That basically says that if for whatever reason, the seller and HomeSmart Connect have a dispute, whoever wins in court gets their attorney's fees paid for. All right. Hopefully that never happens to you.
Right.
The listing price, let's say the listing price in this case is $400,000. If you decide to sell the property as is, you would put a check mark at the as is box, okay? Now we're going to go down to compensation, and this is the biggest change. If some of you have not done a listing in a long time, we are now only going to put on our listing agreements what our office is going to receive for compensation. All right. So HomeSmart Connect to be paid, let's say, for instance, 3% of the final sale price. Want to point out to you, there is no such thing as net, no such thing as gross on this listing agreement. And that is the way of the world now moving forward. All right. You also have the option to charge a flat fee. Let's say you're listing a lot and the lot is a cheap lot. You might only want $1,000 or $2,000 to be paid to us as a flat fee. That's acceptable as well. Now, some of you have said that you really miss the old MLS minus fee. If that is critical to you, you could add it on as an admin fee right here at line 24 that is going to be charged to the seller. All right. So if that is something you're concerned about, you could insert, for instance, $450 at line 24. That is a charge to the seller, not to the buyer's agent. Okay. What's really nice about this listing agreement additionally is that at line 25, you have the option to insert a cancellation fee. And I think this is really important that you put this in before you present it to your seller, because I want them to understand that they just can't arbitrarily go hopping to another broker just because you didn't answer their phone call quick enough. All right. Your
Mhm.
time is worth money. And I think you have to make a decision. How much is my time and my money worth? Figure out how much your photos cost, how much the brochures you made, you're going to be out of pocket. Make it punitive enough that they don't just haphazardly say they're canceling their listing. I think $500 is a nice number. You could do 300, you could do 200, whatever you feel is appropriate. All right, we're not going to tell you what you have to charge. And if you don't want to charge anything, that's your business. You would put an NA there. All right. Let's
Can we
go
take
to,
a break for just a second, Sandy? It seems like a good
yes,
spot. Okay, real quick, I just wanted to share, we were talking about how the Lollapalooza yesterday at Main Street, they had attorneys on there, and the attorneys were saying they are so over these MLS fees.
yeah,
They're seeing people duking it out at the table, and it is not classy. It is not
no,
professional, and it has nothing to do with the purchase.
no,
And so they are done with it, and they cannot wait for all of us as agents to be done with it as well. So that is where the future is headed. These administrative fee is separate, just as Sandy said, your seller is paying that. you know, I, that is something that you would just need to explain to your seller. And really what that's turning around is that's covering your transaction fees, if that's how you want to run your business. But as far as, this deal isn't going to go through now because this person, John Smith, isn't going to pay the MLS fee. No, that's not going to fly anymore. They go by the 8.0. Whatever is on that 8.0 will prevail. So I just want to share that. But here, let's go to the questions here really quick. Also, one of the things we did discuss was that whole as-is provision in the 8.0, because I guess they're still getting a lot of people bringing that up.
yeah.
Right? So, okay. So where do we find the new listing agreement at? So let's just start with that. So Sandy beautifully updates the managing the broker forms in the MLS all the time. So those are your most current forms in there. The other place to find your most current forms is on your agent dashboard in that bottom left corner where it says documents. I am uploading that at the same time that Sandy is doing the MLS. Then we also have the RSA. Now, the RSA doesn't have all the documents. The RSA only has the listing agreement and the compensation form because we found that the RSA is not easy for agents to find the forms. It still can be quite daunting to even find what you need in there. Lastly, we have .loop. I have uploaded all of our listing agreement forms to .loop. But what happens there is on the back end, they make them auto-fillable. And so they have sent me an email that's saying that it will take up to 15 days. We are probably at about day 7. So figure by the end of next week, those forms should be in .loop if you are a .loop user. So I hope that that helps. At the end of this presentation, I will show you the agent dashboard. And I hope that most of you know exactly how to find things in broker forms in the MLS. Can we get a sample of the contract? Yes, I will email that out. And in the rental listing, if you missed it, if you joined late, Main Street has created like a rental checklist, if you will, and I have downloaded that and will be uploading that into rental documents. Let's see here. Will this training be available on the agent training platform? Yes. We will absolutely add these recordings. Will we be notified when forms are updated? Moving forward, I think this is something we can do. In the past, it's just been too hard because there's been too many moving parts and too many changes. Wouldn't you agree, Sandy?
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, yeah,
I just saw a question from Vic. We need to address that one. No, you cannot charge 5% and give part of it to the buyer's agent.
right, that is gone. That is totally gone these
Gone.
days. It's only on
That-
your side now, and you are just going to be educating your seller that the buyer will probably be negotiating for the compensation because it will be in the 8.0.
Right.
So that is why it is not
It's
addressed
not
any
our
longer.
business anymore. We are no longer gonna be dealing with how much the other agent is getting paid. That is between the buyer and the seller at the time of the contract.
That is correct.
All right,
And Amelie has a question about the cancellation fee. So what happens when a seller cancels? They need to write that check to HomeSmart Connect. Always things have to get paid through the brokerage. That is law number 1 we learn at real estate school. So they make the check out to HomeSmart Connect. HomeSmart Connect takes a percentage. They take 10%. So what is that? $50? So they would take $50 if your let's say your cancellation fee was 500. I don't
right.
think that's too bad. So that's how that works. And then you get that 450 out of the 500. Let's see here. What is the attorney's feelings about sellers attorneys? It just jumped about sellers attorneys making 4,000 in title fees. How many clients know the amount they are getting? Jason, that is such a beautiful statement. Through all of this, no one has called the attorneys out on the shady things that they are doing. And let's, I don't want to use the word shady. Let me retract that statement. But, they definitely are not always holding themselves above the line either. And you are spot on about this. Maybe that's something that will come to light in the future. But they are attorneys, so I think we're all kind of scared of
Yeah,
going that route.
yeah.
That's the sad part.
But you know what? Our industry is regulated by NAR, by our local associations,
And your
by
son
the
is not
IDF.
shady, Debbie. I'm sorry for saying that. 'Cause he's right. You're right. He's not. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go,
Yeah,
Sandy.
but we're regulated by certain parties, the boards, NAR, and IDFPR. The attorneys are regulated differently, and so, it's not for us to regulate the attorneys.
That is correct. It's not for us to regulate. That's exactly right. Yes. And they do discuss it. That is exactly right. But I have had some attorneys that do not charge flat fees, for instance. I'll go that route. And then, they're making phone calls last longer than they need to,
Right,
because they get charged by the hour. So, just like with realtors, there's good and there's bad. So we're just going to leave it at that.
yes.
Can we charge 5%? Okay, yes, no, that was the Vic thing. And hi, if my .loop is not pulling any templates, who do I contact about that? Well, the templates, Yelena, are probably just waiting to be updated is the issue. Because like I said, they gave us a 15-day and we still got probably about another week before those documents are uploaded. Can the listing agreement be named listing agreement instead of HS? Yes, we can change the name of the listing agreement. That's easy. We just wanted to make sure that you knew it wasn't Main Street, NASBAR, car, and that was how that came about. So if you think that that's easier to find, that's an easy change. Let's see, Kelly, what if there's a cancellation due to unforeseen circumstances like a job loss or something outside the seller's control? Can we modify that? Sandy, can you answer that? I honestly, I would say.
Absolutely, and if you don't want to charge a cancellation fee, what you would use is the listing modification form to change line 25 to 0, for instance. All right, and as long as the seller and you initial, we're fine with that. We're not forcing you to do that. That is up to you, all right?
Mhm. And Deb Palmer, how do we collect on the cancellation funds? Do we hold out until they pay it? I know what Sandy recommends is that we put it in temp status so that
Yes.
it cannot be relisted until they pay it.
Yeah, now there are options here. They can deliver a cashier's check to the office in Arlington Heights, or Fern told me that we could have them use the first month's rent portal to submit that cancellation fee. And so if they're gonna do it electronically, you need to call the bookkeeping department and let them know that you've got a cancellation fee coming in from so-and-so, and this is for a cancellation for this particular listing or buyer agency agreement.
Beautiful,
All
beautiful.
right,
And yes, again, we do take from your cancellation fee. So again, I'm going to use the amount $500. It's 10%. HomeSmart keeps $50 of that. $50. So, Starbucks or a tank of gas, basically.
all right,
We'll just have two more questions and then we're going to proceed.
right.
What if a seller wants to cancel after a long time, and you suspect that what they want to do is work directly with a buyer or another agent? How do you recommend they handle that?
Well, first of all, we do have a protection period built into our contract, lines 26 through 28, and it says, full compensation in paragraph 4A is owed if a buyer introduced during the term of this agreement closes within 180 days after expiration. All right, unless seller enters into a valid listing agreement with another broker. So if the seller, is present while one of the showings are occurring and gives his business card to the buyer, and the buyer calls him and they collude to do this on their own, and the seller goes and cancels with you, they still owe us a commission. All right. The only way they don't owe us a commission for 180 days is if they've listed with another broker. Does that make sense to you?
Right. And then lastly, we just have have a listing agreement. And we can charge let's see here. What is the percentage we can charge and how the buyer's agent will get compensated? That is all. You want to take that, Sandy?
You can charge whatever you want. We do not care how the buyer gets compensated. The buyer's agent is going to submit the offer on behalf of the buyer to us at the time of the contract, and they're going to put what they want to be paid on that contract. And it's up to the seller whether or not they agree to give them what they ask for. Let's say that they ask for 3.5% on line 33 of the 8.0 contract, and the seller says, I'm only paying 2.5%. That's a counter offer. And you go back to the buyer's agent and say, my seller is only willing to pay 2.5%. Find out if your buyer will agree to that. Okay, it's just like any other counter offer. We have nothing to do. That's a decision between the seller and the buyer legally. Whatever is on the 8.0 contract. All right. We don't have anything to do with it.
Love that. And just a recommendation, when you go to listing appointments, please bring the 8.0 with you. It's a
Yes.
great time to educate your clients on how the process is going to go. This is what you can expect within the first 5 days, in the negotiations, inspections, all of it. So bring an 8.0 with you as well. Can we change the wording from 180 days to 60 days? You can, but I would wonder why your client wants to change
Yeah,
it.
I
red
would
flag.
be very suspicious if a seller said they wanted to change the protection period. That might mean that they've already got it in their heads to do something dirty. Okay? And
Right.
also wanted you to be aware that the additional compensation at the top of page 2 here is what you would earn if an unrepresented buyer approaches you and says they want to see your listing and then they want to um, write an offer on the house. Okay. So most of you, not all of you, but most of you will want to be compensated for the extra time you're going to be utilizing to take care of this buyer. You're going to be writing up that offer for them. You're going to be attending the home inspection with them. You're going to follow up with their lender to make sure that they get their loan done. So how much are you going to ask the seller to compensate you if you're going to take care of this unrepresented buyer? Now, sometimes sellers do not want us to work with unrepresented buyers. I just had a listing where the seller very specifically said, I do not want you showing my house. I want you only to work for me. I do not want you showing our house to any buyers. I would prefer that you pass off any leads to other people in your office. And I said, that's fine with me. So I put in a 0 here, or not applicable. All right. Some of you will do an unrepresented buyer for 1%, for 2%. Let's face it, most of the buyers that are approaching listing agents are doing so because they are expecting to get the house cheaper by approaching you. Most of them do not realize that if you're working with an unrepresented buyer, you're probably charging the seller additional monies. All right. And Deborah, I saw your comment. We haven't gotten to the dual agency portion of the agreement yet. All right. Also, just so you're aware, the way things are now, we're changing the way we work. There is no more gross, there is no more net, there is only purchase price. And commissions are calculated based on purchase price. So let's take an example. The house goes under contract and the purchase price is $100,000. During attorney review, the attorneys together decide to reduce the purchase price to, let's say, $96,000 because instead of giving a credit to the seller, they reduce the purchase price. If the purchase price on the top of the closing statement is $96,000, that is the price that the commission is calculated on. If the purchase price on the top of the closing statement or HUD is 100,000, that's what the commission is calculated on. All right. Let's go on. Whoop. I don't know what happened here. All right. Let's go on to paragraph 6.
Okay.
If the property is leased, this is not for use to use this listing agreement as a rental listing agreement. This is to be used only if, while you have the property listed, Mr. and Mrs. Seller call you up and say, hey, you know what? We decided to rent this to my cousin. And guess what? You're out of luck. You have to cancel the agreement. Well, if that happens, we need to let them know while we're taking this listing, should they decide to go behind your back, that they owe us, let's put in here at line 36, 1 month's rent. And for multi-year leases, pick a number, $500 per lease per year, or if the tenant buys the property, why don't you put in here 2.5% of the purchase price or a flat fee of whatever. All right.
That section is so weird to me because how often does that really happen?
I had it happen once actually.
Did you? Yeah. Okay.
And because my listing agreement did not have something like this in it, they not only did they pay me nothing, they actually said, oh, go ahead and cancel it and we'll pay you for your photos. Guess
Oh,
what?
that's painful.
Guess what never came? The payment for
Payment
the
for the
photos.
photos. Yeah.
that's another thing. I'm in an argument right now with an attorney for a party that is in Texas. And they signed a buyer broker agreement with one of our agents, and they had words with our agent, okay? And this was only after 3 weeks, 25 hours, our agent already worked previewing houses, sending them videos, on and on and on. And they want me to agree to a cancellation. And I said, when I get the funds in-house and they have cleared, we will cancel. Well, I've been arguing with this attorney for a week and a half now, and we have not come to an agreement. So you need to protect yourself as best you can. So I recommend that you don't leave this paragraph 6 blank, because you never know what a seller is going to get into their head to do. And this has happened to me. I had a seller rent a house out from under me. All right.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Paragraph 7. At line 40, you are the seller's designated agent. So your name goes in here. All right. You are their exclusive representative. HomeSmart could assign additional support agents as needed. Let's say, for instance, you get very sick and you have to go into the hospital. I could assign an additional designated agent to this listing, and they would be a legal representative of HomeSmart Connect. And your seller needs to be aware that that could happen. The agent, this is pertaining to the seller and you. Are you or are you not related to the seller? Or do you have any monetary interest in the property? Keep in mind that if you are related to the seller, or if you have a monetary interest in the property, not only do you have to disclose that on the MLS, where the buyer can see it. So in buyer remarks, listing agent related to seller. And then on the contract, it must be on the contract as well. So next to the seller's name, you would put in paren listing agent related to seller. All right. Down at paragraph 8, consent to multiple representations. This, unfortunately, most people in our business understand that if you only had one client at a time, chances are you would be very poor and have trouble putting money on food on the table. But some sellers think that you're devoted 24 hours a day to their needs. Okay. This paragraph is telling them that you very well may represent other sellers, and they consent and waive any claims related to that representation, even after this agreement expires. They can't sue you saying, I thought you were my exclusive agent and you weren't going to work with anybody else. No, that's not part of this agreement. You have every right to work with other sellers and buyers. All right. Paragraph 9, marketing authorization. The property will be listed in the MLS within 48 hours unless deferred to this date. Okay. You could, let's say, take this today, and you are not going to put it in the MLS until the photos are done. You know you need 4 days for photos. So you're going to pick a date on the calendar 4 days out. Now, does everyone here have knowledge of the recent discussions about Zillow and the private listing network? You need to make your seller aware that if they want the property to be put in the private listing network, that there is a possibility that this property would never appear on Zillow. All right. Zillow says that if you put something in the private network, that they're not going to advertise it. All right. Now, I don't know if that tracking is done by address or if it is done by listing number. Sonia, do you know the answer to that question?
I believe it is done by address because
All right.
I have had a previous coworker that worked for a huge Zillow team, and they would be in the background pulling up addresses, pulling up names all day long. That was one of the
Okay.
things they did.
So
So,
that means you couldn't necessarily bypass it by canceling and relisting if it's
right,
tracking the address. So just
correct.
be aware of that before you go and try and sell the private network to your seller. Quite honestly, the private network benefits mostly the listing agent. It does not necessarily benefit the seller because the seller, by and large, will get the highest price possible for their property if it is exposed to the most people possible. And that would be in the standard network, not in the PLN. All right.
Exactly.
All
Yes, it
right.
looks like some additions need to be, we made some revisions to this recently, so it looks like B, we need to add the initial lines back in there. So that'll get worked on today,
All right.
apparently.
So, agent can show while it's in the PLN, yes or no. Agent can share with buyers while it's in the PLN, yes or no. MLS exemptions, the MRED listing exemption authorization form is required to accompany this agreement for full opt-out of the MLS. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but yes, if you're gonna opt out of the MLS entirely, you need an MRED listing exemption form. MLS removal does not mean that the agreement is terminated. The listing agreement remains active until canceled in writing. All right.
You want to take
Lot,
a break here? Or do you want to
sure.
keep going?
We have
Okay.
questions. Let's
All right,
go for it.
let me check. It's, I can't check the chat while I'm sharing my screen,
Sure.
unfortunately. Well, let me
That's
do
okay.
all. Okay, let's see here. Can I go up here and get to where we left off? All right. Cancellation, cancellation. I have a listing now that had a radon issue. The buyer's agent agreed to pay $1,000 and give a credit to his client. The attorney did an addendum and got signatures. Front desk is asking me to get the managing broker to buyer agent signature. That agent is stating why HomeSmart is not paying my commission. What do I do? Trying to understand this,
Oh,
Jennifer.
I think I understand. Here were the problems. If, for instance, you're using an old listing agreement and our old listing agreement has on it the commission we're going to be paying the co-op broker. If we reduce the compensation to the co-op broker, normally we need the managing broker's permission to reduce that commission. So the office and doc review has been trained to get the managing broker from the other office to agree to that discount. Otherwise, they could come back after closing and say you shorted us by this amount of money. All right. Under the new listing agreement, where we're not offering compensation to the co-op broker and it's only being covered by the 8.0 contract, then we are no longer responsible for paying the co-op broker, only the seller is. So there's the disconnect. If it is an old listing agreement where we are offering compensation to the co-op broker, then yes, we need the other office's managing broker to sign off on that reduction. If you are working under a new Main Street or this listing agreement where we are not offering compensation to the co-op broker, that would not be necessary. Does that make sense to you?
That was a great explanation. That is a great. So what if the property is listed as both a sale and a rental at the same time? What do you recommend for documentation there?
As far as what goes.
Let's say this listing agreement, since
All right.
we can, they just use this, that they're going to list it for sale and
No,
rent
no.
same time.
You need a rental listing agreement to list it for rent and for sale. So you would need two listing agreements. The only company that I know does both in one is Heartland. Okay. But we're wanting you to use this, not the Heartland document. Okay.
Okay. And how would you know if they later sold, if someone later sold the listing to the tenant? Um, I would think that probably would happen pretty quickly. Don't you?
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
you need to check the tax records all the time. You know, every 6 months, go and look in the tax records, or maybe every 3 months. All right.
Should we put in line 40 along with our name, another agent's name that would be covering for us when we go on vacation? That's actually a great
If you,
question,
if
Linda.
you want, yes. But
That's a
you
great
better
question.
outline ahead of time, if you're going to be doing that, how you're gonna divvy up the commission. All right? That needs to be formalized in a referral agreement, or if they're gonna be a co-lister, is it 50-50? Is it 50-40? Is it 60-40? I mean? Is it 75-25? How are you gonna divide up that money?
Okay, we have some Zillow questions coming up here. Can't we bust Zillow by only doing private and getting it sold? So we don't need Zillow. Most buyers work with agents and not Zillow anyway. And I agree with you, Deb, that we shouldn't care that our listings are not going to go in Zillow, because the reality is they're still going to get pulled into realtor.com, homes.com. I mean, there's still 100 other sites that are going to pull your listings, that people can be searching, redfin.com, and although we don't want to plug other companies, that is the reality of it. So to just worry about one company is silly. It's really
But I
silly.
think you're doing your seller a disservice by not exposing them to the full MLS.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, when you do put it in the MLS and it gets pulled to these other platforms, it honestly, it makes you're nationwide. And in some
Yes,
instances, you're even internationally viewed. So it is really more beneficial for your client, and will always be, to have them in the standard MLS and not on the PLN. 100%. 100%. Um, in fact, do we think it might be just a matter of time before Compass gets sued by sellers for this? Yes, because sellers are going to realize that they're not getting top dollar, because they're not getting the ultimate exposure, because Compass is in essence being greedy.
yeah.
That is the reality of what's happening here. And they're just trying to cover it up. Private listings can be advantageous to test the price and then list without accumulating days on the market and showing adjustments. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I would probably consider just only doing that for a couple days, though. I don't know that you need that
Could,
much time to test a
could I
price.
offer you a better alternative to the private listing network to determine price?
Please do.
When I take a new listing, I input that listing as a draft 3 times. One, the top price I'm gonna guess at, a middle price, and a bottom price. I let those 3 drafts age for 24 hours, and then I do a reverse prospect on each of those 3 drafts to see
Yes,
which price generates the most activity. All right?
that is
That,
genius, Sandy.
that is a much better
So
way of
smart.
determining price.
That is so smart, because you can just keep cloning the listings and just change the price also.
You got it.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. Most PLNs I've seen have come up as coming soon in Zillow. How is that possible? Uh, I honestly don't know, Brenda. That's a really good question. I have no idea how they're getting around that. What if you have an old agreement with compensation and the contract agreement was higher? Do we need to amend? Great question. Do
No,
they need to do a modification? Okay.
no.
Do we
Because
use
on your commission statement, you're only gonna show our side anyway. The buyer's agent is gonna prepare their own commission statement and submit it to the attorneys in the title company.
do we
Okay?
use the car listing form if the property is in Chicago?
You don't need to, no.
Now with rentals, I would say yes, because the rentals are so different in the
Yeah,
city
yeah,
than the
that's fine.
suburbs. Yes. Okay, can you explain again, if the contract price is 600K and afterwards we did a credit for repairs and it sells for 590K, is the commission paid on 600 or 590? I was always told 600K.
It is, what is at the top of the HUD? What price? Is it 600? If it's 600, the commission is paid on 600. If
So what I'm
the,
hearing is that's a discussion with your attorney, really.
that is, absolutely. So if they give a credit, credits don't change the commission. All right?
Yeah.
The only thing that changes the commission structure is if they change the purchase price. All right?
All right.
Any
And
other,
Deb said, correct. What I mean is, who cares about Zillow? Love it. Do we need to use the listing exemption form if we are just delaying entry 2 or 3 weeks into the MLS? And I
yes, you
believe,
do.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Uh, all right. And then Rick says, don't worry about Zillow. They will come back to the market once their buyers leave the platform. Some sellers need the PLN. I'm for helping the seller. Great response. for response. Sorry, I missed the question just a minute ago about Chicago rentals. Do we still use this listing agreement?
Not for Chicago rentals. No, you shouldn't use this for any rentals, actually. This is only for sales, all right?
Beautiful.
And right now, I would recommend that you use the Chicago listing agreement for, it's more critical. You can use any listing agreement to list a property in Chicago. You're gonna need to know more about the property than might be on that listing agreement. What is important, though, when you're renting a property in Chicago, that you only use the Chicago lease. That is critical, all right?
All right, that's it for questions for now. Let's go ahead and get back
All
to
right.
page 3. Here we go.
Online listing options, paragraph 11. HomeSmart Connect is authorized to promote the properties online, but listings will be withheld if the seller requests it. All right, let's look at line 70. I want the property listed online. Most sellers would say yes. So we need seller initials there. Line 71. Do you want the address to be displayed? Most sellers would say yes. They want the buyers to be able to drive by and look at the neighborhood and see if they like it. Let's move down. If the listing is not online, it won't appear in search results. HomeSmart may market the property via signs, websites, social media, and MLS. Photos and marketing materials are not owned by HomeSmart. All right, your responsibility, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are to provide timely access for showings, to keep the property presentable, respond promptly to agent communications, disclose ownership, liens, legal actions, and municipal notices, provide all relevant HOA and condo documents, including the decks, rules, insurance, budgets, meeting minutes, and legal matters. Okay? Very important. I would advise you to try and get copies of all these things prior to posting the listing online, because you could be asked questions about the rules of the association. For instance, are cats allowed? Are dogs allowed? Is there a weight limit? You need to know that as a listing agent. All right. Fair housing. This is critical. Your seller needs to understand that it is illegal to discriminate against any prospective buyer or lessee based on race, age, color, religion, sex, ancestry, protection status, gender identity, marital status, disability, familial status, pregnancy, national origin. Read the entire paragraph to them. I think it's important. I had a situation several years ago where an owner said he was on the first floor and he had an elderly neighbor, or he was on the second floor, had an elderly neighbor on the first floor. And he said, I will not sell to anyone with children. And I said, you can't do that. You cannot discriminate against someone with children. And he said, well, I will not consider it. So I canceled the listing. I said, then you'll have to sell by owner and hope you don't get caught, but I will not be party to it. All right. So be very careful. Sometimes it's very, sometimes the discrimination is subtle and you won't necessarily realize it. Pay attention to what your seller is telling you and make sure that they understand that you have to obey the law of the state of Illinois that you live in. And Illinois is stricter than many other states. Just keep that in mind. All right, minimum services. Do you all understand that as a real estate broker in the state of Illinois, I don't care whether you are only getting $400 for your services as a listing agent. You have obligations to the seller. You must accept and present all offers and counteroffers. You must assist in developing, negotiating, and presenting offers until an agreement is signed and contingencies are resolved. You must answer client questions about offers, counteroffers, and contingencies. You cannot post in the MLS, present all offers directly to the seller. That is a violation. All right. You have to provide minimum services. Now we get to the dual agency paragraph, and this explains what you can and can't do as a dual agent, all right? Now, keep in mind, the seller does not have to give permission for dual agency. The designated agent or licensee may represent both the seller and the landlord or buyer tenant in a dual representation for the sale or lease of a property. We may want to in the future take out lease of the property because this is only for sale. But let's keep going. Representing both parties in a transaction creates an inherent conflict of interest, as each client's interests are different. You are very much limited with dual agency. You can no longer advise the seller how to counter an offer. You can no longer advise a buyer what the suggested offer price may be. You can give comps to both sides. You cannot interpret those comps. All right. Let's go on to the next page. If and when we get audited, all right, I will tell you the first thing an auditor will say when they enter the front door of our office, we want your last 10 dual agency contracts. And they go and pull them apart. They have the right to contact sellers and buyers to see if they understood what they were getting into. And keep in mind, when you're doing dual agency, according to state law, every party to dual agency must consent on 2 separate occasions. For the seller, the first time is here on the listing agreement. The second time for the seller is on the contract. They're going to give permission again. So what can a licensee do? They can treat clients honestly. They can provide information to the buyer or tenant. They can disclose all latent material defects. They can disclose financial qualification of the buyer or tenant to the seller or landlord. They can explain terms in the contract. They can help the buyer or tenant to arrange for property inspections. They can explain closing costs and procedures. They can help the buyer compare financing alternatives. And they can provide information about comparable properties that have sold so that the clients can make an educated decision on what price to offer or accept. Now, what you can't do, you can't disclose information that you may know about the seller or the buyer without either side's permission. You can't disclose the price or terms that the seller or landlord would be willing to take other than the listing price without their permission. You can't disclose the price or terms the buyer or tenant is willing to pay without permission of the buyer or tenant. You can't recommend a suggested price or terms the buyer should offer, and you can't recommend a suggested price or terms to the seller to counter with or accept. Does everyone understand that? Does everyone here understand that you do not have to act as a dual agent in order to be paid on both sides? Does everyone understand that you could treat the buyer with no agency and still reserve the right to advise the seller? You complete all the forms you work with an unrepresented buyer under a notice of no agency. You will still collect that fee for an unrepresented buyer, but you have not compromised yourself by doing dual agency, and you can still represent your seller fully. Okay.
Love it.
Let's go down to earnest money deposits. This clearly says we do not hold earnest money. It is up to your seller and their attorney how they want to handle earnest money. We could use Smart Title, and we have Smart Title attorneys, and we have a whole list of them. Where do we have that list of Smart Title attorneys, Sonia?
So it is in a couple of different places. It is in RSA. It is in the welcome packet that is on the agent dashboard, and it is also uploaded in the listing packet in the documents in the agent dashboard. So I will show that.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got options here. When this listing goes under contract, the seller's attorney. If you want to, at line 138, if they have a different attorney, they may have somebody in their family that's an attorney. You don't know. You are going to choose either line 137 to use a smart title attorney, or you're going to use 138. You have a different attorney's name. Okay. So entirely up to you. If you use a smart title attorney, there are benefits to you as, are we now able to pay out our listing agents at the closing table, Sonia? If they
Yeah,
use
no,
this,
not yet.
not
Not
yet,
yet. It's coming.
it's
So
coming.
one of the benefits of a smart title, though, and using a smart title attorney is that, that relationship that they're going to accept your phone calls on the weekends and the evenings. We can share that phone number to all of you, and they're very welcome to take phone calls outside of hours if you have questions. And also if there's something going bad with the deal, it's better contact. Sometimes when you use another attorney and now they've sent it over to their title company, you don't even know what title company they sent it to. So you have lost kind of
Exactly.
control over your deal in a sense. You get the closing, you're like, oh, this is where we're closing. And then you also don't even know who the closer is. So, one of the benefits to using a smart title attorney is A, you can get a favorite, establish a team, have that strong person working with you. B, as soon as we are done with getting all these documents streamlined, we will be able to pay you at the closing table. We just have a certain thing, a path that we have to take to get there. And then, also just smart title is, through Chicago Title. So you always know that things would be closed at Chicago Title. And there's so many locations. So it's just a win in every way. But certainly you want to work on what's best beneficial for your seller. And if they say, I have a family member that's an attorney, use your family member. We're going to use whomever they want. But I do recommend that if you have someone who says, I want to use my attorney, say, will you please call them and just ask them if they will charge a flat fee or if they're going to charge you by the hour. That
Yeah.
right there shows your value. Just to give them that advice. And it's such a small little snippet, but it goes far.
Catherine is asking, can somebody else hold earnest money like the other brokerage? Absolutely. Another title company can hold it as well. That's a decision that will be made at the time of the contract. And it's up to you. Just make sure that your contract, when it comes in, doesn't say that we are holding the earnest money. That's the only problem I have. If it's the other attorney, if it's another title company, you're going to check other. All right. If it is the buyer's broker, you're going to check the buyer's broker. All right.
Love that. And it's true. And I know it gets confusing because in a sense, we do hold earnest because we've got Castle Connect, which is Chicago Title. So the answer is yes, we do hold it, but we just cannot check it on the form
Yeah.
because
And
it is not
it's not
HomeSmart
really us
Connect.
holding it.
Right. It's a third party.
Yes. Okay. So if you're
Mhm.
going to use Smart Title, you need to register ahead of time. Has everybody in this room registered with Castle Connect so that they can use Smart Title? Because that's something you need to do ahead of time so that you're prepared. And there is a link once you are registered in the MLS under broker forms for you to pass that link to your buyer. What happens is you're going to fill out the information on that form telling the title company the name of the buyer, their contact information, their email address, and then Smart Title will contact your buyer and make arrangements for the earnest money to be either electronically transferred or for a drop off. All right.
Beautiful. And if you need any more help with this, the girls at the front desk are amazing and help all of our new agents as well with signing up for
Yes.
Castle Connect if they have issues.
Right.
Okay, so one of the questions we have, if there's no lockbox needed pertaining to the lockbox question, paragraph 10, and there is no answer yes or no because it does not apply, can we leave it blank? Is that
I
going to be okay?
prefer you put NA for not applicable.
Okay, good answer.
All right.
And also let's just go into that discussion. Please don't use combo lock boxes. We know
Okay.
they're cheap and easy to come by, but you cannot monitor it.
No.
And people can get that code and have access to your seller's property at any and all times. So that is not safe and it is not recommended. Did we purposely leave off the AVM question and remarks remarks question that we have to answer when inputting the listing. Yes, we did.
Yeah,
Yes, we did, Kelly.
I think, quite honestly, that the AVM is a disservice to your sellers. I would never check yes on the AVM. As well, I would never check, yes to comments and reviews. I think that's a decision you can make, but I think it's in your seller's best interest to be no on both of those. All right?
Okay, this is an interesting one. When the listing address isn't available online, the buyers will call the listing agent. I've met some great future clients this way. All right. Well, that's great. That's great. And we definitely have seen that. I see that more for land though, in all
Yeah.
honesty, it's like zero, Grand Avenue.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do we still need written consent from the seller if they don't want new offers presented after their property goes under contract?
Yes.
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 Okay. With a listing, seller does not want us to represent another, but we found a serious buyer. We can introduce that buyer to another realtor that we know and collect a referral fee. And this has a question mark at the end.
I didn't really understand that question.
So if the seller does not want you to represent someone else, like to do,
Oh, an
names of
unrepresented buyer.
correct.
Yeah.
Can you introduce the buyer to another realtor and collect a
And-
referral fee? Yes,
Yes.
please do.
But keep
That's
in
the
mind, you
best.
have to disclose that referral fee to all parties.
Okay, back to the transparency issue, which is beautiful. Okay.
Okay?
Is an unrepresented buyer a considered dual agency?
No.
Can we
Okay.
put to be determined if attorney hasn't been chosen at the time of the listing?
Yeah. Yes.
Can't the title company hold the earnest money or buyer's brokerage? I don't see a checkbox for those options because no,
That's a
we have
decision
decided.
your seller's gonna make at the time the offer comes in.
Correct. And that is what is addressed on the 8.0. So it does not need to get addressed
That's
on the listing
correct.
agreement.
Correct.
Do we have a link to send to buyers when the house goes under contract for earnest money? Ooh, that's a good question.
We have
About that.
instructions in the broker forms, for earnest money.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Sandy. That's exactly what I was thinking too. Couldn't we you could put your link for Castle Connect in the private broker remarks section.
Is that allowable? I don't know. Emred is so strict about certain things. I don't think that's a problem, but we need to check it out.
Yes, yes. I just
Okay.
am saying that because I've seen other companies do that, like use Paylocity and, things like that.
Yeah. All right.
How about if a seller doesn't have an attorney name yet? Okay, we already covered that. It's fine. That's nothing that will make or break this agreement to not have the attorney. It's
Right.
just on there to have that discussion because the attorney is an important part of this.
I would say Diane's asked how we disclose that payment or referral fee. I think an email would suffice, put it in writing to them. Okay.
Love that. Let's see here. How are we addressing the comments or reviews on my listing and or automated value of my listing? Do we need additional forms when we add listing to the MLS? So Moses, okay, so from what I gather, you're just wondering because those two items were left off of this listing agreement, you are wondering how you should put it in the MLS? And the answer should be that they should be no's,
Yes.
basically,
Right.
right?
Yes.
All right, we only have a couple more. I have a very hard time getting buyers and buyers agents to give me the contact information so that I can get the earnest money wired. No agent wants to cooperate. I even tell them to call Chicago Title themselves. It is a total nightmare to get the earnest money wired. I email everyone over and over, letting them know our process. The phone number and email are so often left off of the contract. That is so true. That is so true. So many times we see offers come over from buyers where there's no email, no phone number,
Right.
and even it's required on there. Very frustrating. I don't know what we can do about that, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Except, be better on our end. That's all we
Yes.
can really do.
Sometimes though, if you address this before your seller signs the contract and say to the other agent, I'm gonna need the buyer's name, address, phone number, and email address. before my sellers sign the contract, because we're gonna be giving it to Smart Title so that they can contact your buyer. And if the contract is not signed, they may be more willing to give you that information because they want their buyer to get the deal.
That's actually a really smart idea to hold off on having your seller sign it. Love
Yeah.
that. Okay, let's see here. All right, that's really about it because
All
you've
right.
covered everything. So let's move on. Back to, let's see here, we're going on to page 5.
Yeah, and as far as Moses is concerned, yeah, we did not put those two things on here because we believe they should always be no. Comments review should be no, and AVM should be no. It's not in your seller's best interest. So I would just advise you to do that. All right. The first paragraph, alternative energy, that's at A. This is about solar panels. If you are listing a house with solar panels, you need to do some homework and find out if they're owned or if they're leased. You need to find out what the balance is. If they have a financing agreement, because the buyer will need to qualify for this as well as the mortgage. And that makes it tough sometimes. Sometimes that lease runs for 20 or 30 years. Um, it could be a make or break for this sale. All right. And sometimes I've seen where sellers have been forced to pay off that loan or that lease. All right. So are they owned outright? Are they owned, but they have a financing agreement? Or are they, will they be paid in full by the seller no later than closing? Or are they rented with a monthly payment of? Okay, find and be very helpful if you had the contract that your seller signed at the time that they were installed. All right. At paragraph 18, the seller agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the agent and the broker from any claims, costs, or legal issues arising from the sale, including those resulting from misstatements or misinformation provided by the seller. HomeSmart's sole responsibility is facilitating the sale. The seller must supply all necessary closing documents, including title work. 19 is severability, amendments, mediation, and disclaimer. If any part of this agreement is found invalid, the remainder remains effective. Amendments must be in writing and signed by all parties. Electronic signatures are acceptable, and disputes will be addressed through mediation per the American Arbitration Association. Just wanted to give you a heads up here. I was advised by an attorney years ago that you do not want to go to the American Arbitration Association if you don't have to, because it's very, very expensive and it will wear you down financially. Paragraph 20, home warranty and disclosures. The seller agrees to provide the buyer with a limited home warranty policy from, you would state the name of the company here, and how much they're willing to pay for that home warranty. Many of the sellers decide to hold off on this until they see what their offer is. Other sellers, if they feel that maybe that will make their property more attractive to buyers, might want to put it on before they list it. So you can discuss the pros and cons with your seller at the time you take the listing. I usually bring a couple brochures with, let them see what is included and what the cost is of a home warranty. Paragraph 21 is regarding the seller disclosures. And this tells the seller that they have to complete the residential real property disclosure report. And I will tell you right now that if you accept an offer from a buyer without having had them sign the real property disclosure report, that contract is fully voidable. All right. Buyers need to be given disclosures prior to them making an offer on the house. All right. Read this paragraph to your seller so that they understand it. Now, with regard to seller disclosures, some interesting changes came about a year and a half ago. And that is if you're dealing with an estate sale, for instance, and let's say this is John, he's the son of the seller who passed. And John lived in that house from the time he was born until the time he was 15. And then John went to live with his divorced dad. And he didn't live with his mom any longer. And let's say his mom died now, and he's responsible for selling her house. He has to complete the entire disclosure because he once lived in this house. If the person selling the house for the deceased had property management responsibilities, in other words, they paid all the bills for the deceased seller, then they must also complete these forms. The only time a seller is fully exempt from completing the seller's property disclosure is when they never lived in the property and they never had management responsibility of that property. All right. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Taxes, special assessments, and association fees. Does everyone understand the difference between a special assessment and a special service area? Okay. The special assessment typically happens when an association says, for instance, we need to put new roofs on the condo building, a new roof on all these condo buildings, and we're going to special assess you. Mr. and Mrs. All the homeowners get a special assessment. There's usually a period of time that it has to be paid off by, and you're going to have a due date and amount. And very commonly, these special assessments are paid off at the closing table by the seller. On the other hand, a special service area assessment is one that is typically imposed by a builder. And instead of adding the cost of bringing in all the utilities into the subdivision onto the cost of the house, the builder will now put that cost in as a special service area assessment. Commonly, you will see that tax added on to your regular real estate tax bill, and that can travel with the property for up to 40 years. Some of the special service areas run for a very long time. I want you to be aware, however, that let's say the builder is building, say, 5 different phases. I had a townhouse subdivision in Volo that I listed, a townhouse that was built in phase 1, and they had a special service area. We went to sell 4 years later and found out that we were up against competition from phase 4 and phase 5 people selling, and the special service area was no longer being passed on to the purchasers in that subdivision. So my seller was confronted with this gigantic special service area that traveled with the property for 40 years. And in order to be competitive, they had to pay off their special service area before they sold. Okay. Condominium or homeowners association, you're going to insert the association name, the phone number, the management company name, and the phone number. Also, you should have a person named here so that we know who to call in that association. Okay. Document all the fees. What is included in that association fee? Heat, water, electric, gas. If you find something that is included that we have not listed here, feel free to write it in the blank spaces, okay? Many associations have additionally a master association. All right, I just listed a property in a townhouse association that has single family and townhouses. There was a monthly association fee and a yearly master association fee. All right, very common. Let's go on to line 208. The real estate tax for, and I think what you're going to find is the most recent ascertainable tax bill is currently still 23, I believe. Have any of you seen 24 taxes yet? No?
No, I
Okay.
haven't personally.
All right, so I think Cook County is the slowest one. Oh, Jennifer says, yes, DuPage is posting their 24 taxes. Cook is very slow. We don't get the real tax bill in Cook County until the second installment of every year. So we will find out the real tax bill in Cook County for 24 in August, probably, or September at the latest. All right, we need to check off at line 210 and 211 what type of exemptions the seller has. Is there a senior exemption, senior freeze, homeowner? All right, there could be all of those.
Mhm.
Any questions before we go on to the next page?
Mm.
Let's proceed. Okay, a lot of this stuff is really straightforward. Notices can be given in writing, via email, regular certified mail. E-signatures are completely acceptable. Email is acceptable. Overnight delivery. I haven't had an overnight delivery or a fax in many, many years, but you know what? Miracles still occur. Recently dealt with, an attorney who still used a fax regularly. So I got rid of my fax machine about 8 years ago. I don't know how I would fax anything anymore. Okay, no modification of this agreement shall be valid or enforceable unless it is in writing and signed by both parties. Okay, very
So
straightforward.
just a little addition there. As you can see, the additional addendums to this listing agreement was added, and
Yep,
that is to, check off that box if you have, maybe it's a short sale, maybe it's a relocation, maybe it's a foreclosure. So that's your opportunity to then write that on this line
all right.
or fit it in here wherever you can.
And for your protection, have everyone sign the anti-fraud disclosure. And then we're gonna move on and look at the personal property page as well. All right. Here's the personal property rider. You're gonna put the address at the top, the city, the state, the zip, and we're gonna carefully go over all of this and check off everything that is going to be included. If you have items that are not on here, feel free to write them in under other items included. If there is anything that is not in working order, you're gonna put it in under that line, items not included or not in working order. So let's say that the seller says, I'm really fond of that Ring doorbell and I intend to take it with me. You would put it in here under items not included, but make sure that you list that on the MLS as having the seller taking it, that it's not included. Otherwise, once they see it, they really want it typically, okay? And I once had a seller say, I'm not leaving that refrigerator because my father gave me that refrigerator right before he died. And sure enough, even though I had in the MLS that the seller was keeping their refrigerator, the buyer was insisting that they get that refrigerator. So what ended up happening is my seller went out and bought the identical refrigerator and left it for the buyer so that everybody would be happy.
Wow,
Yeah.
very nice.
Okay. And here's your anti-fraud warning to consumers. Every seller should sign this. All right. This is an affiliated business arrangement disclosure. Just because your seller acknowledges this does not mean that they have to use Smart Title, but they're being informed that, yes, we have a business arrangement with this company.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the document and we can move over to questions again.
Sure.
And then I'll share, in a few more minutes, I'll share where we can find these documents again with you. And I also, you probably have noticed that this form, this listing agreement already had Sandy's initials and Sandy's signature on it. So we are trying to save you time and stress. But there is also a version that does not have those signatures on there. And that would be in case you, for some of our new agents, or, we've got certain situations where maybe a different managing broker that we have needs to sign off. So you have a couple of options there.
Mhm.
Yes. All right. So getting to the questions. Let's see here. where do we, let's go. We got 9 new messages. DuPage, Lake County. Can we still use board listing agreement or will it be rejected by the front desk?
It will
I'll
be
answer that.
rejected by doc review.
Yes, it is going to be required to use this listing agreement. Part of the reason why we are doing this is we are streamlining all of the documents so that our compliance team no longer has 9 different boards with documents that they need to review. We need to save them time, stress, energy, as well. It's going to save you time, stress, and energy because you'll be able to memorize this listing agreement. And
Exactly.
yes, so it's a win-win for everyone. Let's see here. On page 1, lines 1 and 2, can you give examples? The seller and the title held by are different. Oh, that's a great question, Linda.
All right, let's say the seller's name is Mary Smith, but she took title to this property when she bought it in the name of her LLC, ABC LLC. That would be the name on the title.
Perfect.
Okay.
And is it because HomeSmart Connect receives monetary compensation from HomeSmart that they have to sign that? Yes, absolutely. Anytime you have any kind of affiliation where it benefits the company, you do have to disclose that, of
Yeah.
course. Let's see here. That one was already answered. Do we have to use Smart Title affiliated business arrangement disclosure if the seller is using a different title company, or can we skip it? Everything has to be signed in this agreement.
Yeah.
It is not an addendum. It is not an add-on. It is now part of the contract. So
That's correct. And just because you're not using them doesn't mean that we shouldn't be honest with the seller and tell them that we have an arrangement with this company.
absolutely. For Chicago listings, we can use car, or is this one correct?
This is correct.
This is correct. If we have a property that we list and have tenants, what do we need in the contract to ask tenants for permission to show the property? So in that regard, wouldn't you recommend we use a different listing agreement?
No, this listing agreement is fine, but I think, you know, when you're filling out your showing time form, when you list a property, you have to go into showing time and put all the permissions, who's going to be called for showings. That's when you're going to put in the tenant information. And I would advise, if you're listing a property with a tenant in place, talk to that tenant before you list the property. Don't wait until after the tenant has already rejected 8 or 10 showings to find out that the tenant is not willing to show the property. You need to have that discussion before you list the property. Okay? Find out. Maybe they'll only show it on Saturdays. That's fine. Then you put that in showing time. All right?
That is absolutely true. I actually had a situation where we had to start charging the tenant $25 every time that they would not show. So
Mhm.
you actually do have recourse. If a tenant will not cooperate, you can put in an enforcement. So that would be something when you're discussing listing a property that has a tenant in there. Let the tenant know, I will charge you. Tell them in advance. If you disrupt showings and you are purposefully making it difficult to sell this property.
Yeah. Another thing you need to look at is find out from the seller. You should look at a copy of that tenant's lease before you start enforcing your will on that tenant. Find out what the tenant's rights are. Really should look
Yes.
carefully at that lease. All right.
Yes, yes. Okay, and then we have a big kudos for you and I, Sandy, for all the hard work we are doing. Thank you so much for that, Zach. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you. Can we go over the buyer's contract? That's definitely going to be another training that we will put together.
Yeah.
We're already, burning a lot of time today, so we don't want to have to go into that. How do you charge a tenant this amount for disrupting? You actually start billing them. You start sending them invoices. And what I have done is worked with my seller to do this because the seller has that contact. So the seller can send them a Zelle request. Things like that can be done. And all it takes is a couple of times for that tenant to see that you are holding them accountable, and they will usually start to make some changes. Because otherwise, what are their options? They need to be out there looking for a place to move also, or they're going to be staying. And they're usually, very nervous on, is that lease going to go up when when my lease expires and now that I have a new landlord. So in general, I have seen where I feel like 50% of, maybe even more, 50% of people, uh, when they hear you're selling the property and you're not going to be the landlord anymore, they want to go too. They just get scared,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. They're like, I have no idea, this landlord might be awful. I'm out. Um, okay. Thank you, Rick. Thanks to everybody. Sam is talking to tenant, to cooperate for showing. Okay. I'm wondering if that was a question. Oh, is that the responsibility of the owner or the agent? The answer is really the owner, but the agent needs to be involved as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't know if the owners are having the right conversation, right, Sandy?
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
I also think that it's in your best interest if you're dealing with a situation where you've got a tenant occupied property and there's a lockbox on the property, that you advise the tenants that they should lock up all their valuables. I had a situation probably about 10 years ago, where a tenant claimed that jewelry was stolen from the house at a showing. Um, and I don't think it happened. I think the tenant was just angry and was trying to get the landlord to back off and not sell the property. But that would be on their homeowner's insurance policy. But the tenant, I think it's a good idea to get the tenant to sign off on a lockbox authorization.
Love that. You're right. And then
Right.
that way you also have, exactly who's coming and going as well.
Exactly.
Let me
And,
take the last. Go ahead.
and that's one thing about central lock. Quite honestly, I don't think I'd ever use any other kind of lockbox, guys, because you have a record of who entered the house and what time. All right?
100%. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and share really quick, the my desktop here and show you where you can find. See here. Show you where you can find the agent dashboard. So, can you all see the agent dashboard? Can I just get a nod of heads so I can see your faces? So this is our new agent dashboard. You go to homesmartconnection.com. It is singular, not plural. And under homesmartconnection.com, when you type that in, you can save it as a bookmark, whatever the case is. And this is what's so beautiful about it. You have your MLS, you have your RSA, Smart Title if you have questions, which is also has how to sign up for Castle Connect in there. You've got .loop, Lofty, scheduling photos, putting your signs up and down. You can order sign panels, and all of these are tied to HomeSmart Connect, so that, like, for instance, if you're on the CE shop and you need to do continuing education, for all of us managing brokers, this was just due, on April 30th. How to log into CE shop, this already goes to the HomeSmart Connect portal for it. You can order a la carte services, meaning our transaction coordinator. If you need help with anything transaction-wise, the order form and prices are right here on this app. This bottom corner has all of your HomeSmart documents. I'm going to click on it, and I hope it will show you the next page. Did it show you something that says agent documents at the top? Can I get a nod of
Yes.
heads?
Yes.
Thank you. As you scroll down, you see listing documents. Real quick, if you click on listing documents, you will see that they are all in here. It's going to take you to the actual page with everything in here. All of your documents are in here. Smart Title Attorneys List, the MRED exemption form, reasons why not to sell as a FSBO. You can give this to your clients at a listing appointment. Notice of no agency is in here for when you do your open houses. The private listing network form is actually here as well, in addition to our listing agreement for you. You've, of course, got your disclosures that are necessities, your compensation statement, and then listing agreements. This one does not have Sandy's signature on it. This one does. So the reason why this site is so helpful for us is because, along with Sandy and her help getting things into the broker forms in the MLS, it's too difficult to get all of these into the IRRSA. The organization is not user friendly. And then .loop takes so long as well for them to, update .loop every time we submit forms for the templates. So this and broker forms is truly going to be your best way to get all of the documents that you need for your contracts. That will be the most up to date and current for you moving forward. I just wanted to show you, if I go back here, again, there's listing documents, but as I keep scrolling down, we've got buyer documents, lease rental documents. What's coming more will be land and some commercial documents. So those will be added in the future as well. For right now, the next focus, since we have all of our listing documents in order, minus a few changes we're going to make today, is getting the buyer's documents all set. So I'll just click on this real quick and show you kind of how this file is coming along. We've got the purchase agreement. Currently, right now, we have the NASBAR buyer representation agreement in there because we are perfecting the HomeSmart buyer representation agreement. You've got your compensation statement, lenders, an appraisal gap addendum, an escalation clause addendum. You've got your dual agency form. So I'm open to your suggestions always. I love a collaborative. I love when we work together. So if anyone has any great ideas, please feel free to email me and I will make sure to add documents, revise documents, whatever we need to do. Of course, if something is really difficult, I'm going to run it by our team and we're going to come to a decision together. But for the most part, we just want you to know that we do care about your feedback and want you to know that, please let us know what your thoughts are because a lot of you have great ideas as well. So back to the dashboard, just want to share that also in this top corner in the dashboard, you're going to see welcome to HomeSmart. This is the new welcome page that we send to all of our new agents when they join HomeSmart Connect. So this is your lovely welcome to HomeSmart. This is your resources. So for all of our agents, even if you are not new, this is a great place for resources. It can remind you of locations. If you simply click on a link, for instance, it's going to give you a map to those locations that we have. We have contact information for people. We have your agent support team and what their contact is. We've got our transaction coordinator in here as well. We've got training portals and days and times so that you can always reach out to them if you have questions. Unfortunately, this one wraps for Diane because it's a little bit longer of an email. We've got your policy and procedures manual. This is mandatory to have. So we want you to have access to this at all times. And the best part, again, if we make any changes to that policy and procedures manual, it is in real time. No delays. The latest version will always be on here. We've got an option here for your agent roster. You need to find who you worked with on a deal recently for HomeSmart. This is only for HomeSmart agents. You need someone to do an open house. You have someone you met at one of our meetings. You can find them in this portal. It's just an easy, quick way to get there. I mean, there's so much in here. We've got a new agent checklist. Maybe you need to go through these and do some of these things yourself for your files as well. Ordering business cards. We've got our logos. You can simply right click on these and do a save as. So now you have all the logos. So I'm not going to keep going. There's so many things in this resources. So it's what we're trying to do is double, triple, combine everything, make it easy for you, simplify it, have things at your fingertips. So I hope that helps. So that's all I've got for you there.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I will stop sharing and I guess we will say goodbye and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.